Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about simplifying algebraic expressions. So when you hear the word simplify, that means to put it in its simplest form or its smallest form. And when you're dealing with algebraic expressions, that involves one or two things or both of these. So the first thing you'd look to do is distribute. Now that's the shorthand of what you would do, but you would distribute the terms on the outside of parentheses, being multiplied them to every term on the inside of that parenthesis only. And then your second step would be to combine the like terms for your expression. Now, distributing, if you remember, is the process of multiplication, right? And combining like terms is the process of addition, okay? So first you do all your distributing, then you combine like terms, and then you have simplified your algebraic expression completely. So before we actually do larger problems, let's review some of the things we worked on previously. So the first example, all we're going to do is actually distribute because the negative 9 is being multiplied to that quantity. So we take the 9 and multiply it to each of the terms inside the parentheses. So negative 9 times a positive x is a negative 9x. And then a negative 9 times a negative 7, remember the signs found to the left, is a positive 63. And since these aren't like terms, that is our final answer, negative 9x plus 63. Now, if you look at the second example, we don't have any parentheses. So all we can do then is combine like terms. So first, let's identify our like terms. Well, we have a negative 3x and a negative 8x. When we combine those, they're both negative, so we get negative 11x. Okay, keep the variable and exponent the same. And we also combine our constants, positive 9 and negative 11. Since we're adding a positive and a negative, we subtract and keep the sign of the large number, negative 2. That would be our final answer. Okay, so we reviewed one problem with just distributing, and then one problem combining like terms. So look at number 1. So in the first part, number 1, we have the negative 6 being multiplied to that quantity. And then being subtracted from that is the 3x, okay? So the first thing we do, if you remember our first slide, was we distribute. If we distribute every term on the outside of parentheses to every term on the inside of the parentheses only. So the negative 6 is going to be multiplied to the positive 5 and the negative x. So when we do that, we get negative 30. And negative 6 times the negative x is a positive 6x, okay? Now, the negative 3x is not inside the parentheses, so it's not part of that quantity. So all we do for right now is just bring it down with the rest of the problem. So once we do our distributing, now we can combine our like terms. So what like terms do we have? A positive 6x and a negative 3x. We add those up, we do get positive 3x minus 30. So I did choose to do it in standard form. The 3x has to be positive and the 30 has to be negative. Okay? So let's look at the second example. Just clear a little bit of space here. So in the second example, we have 5 minus 4 times the quantity, 2x minus 1. Now I will admit here, for some people, it's very tempting to subtract 5 minus 4, but actually you cannot do that. Why? Because it's actually negative 4, is being multiplied to this parenthesis. And remember, multiplication takes priority over addition and subtraction. So we actually have to distribute first. So we're going to take this negative 4. And notice again I said negative 4 because 4's sign is found to the left of it. We multiply it to the positive 2x and we multiply it to negative 1. So negative 4 times 2x is negative 8x. Negative 4 times a negative 1 is a positive 4. Now just like the last problem, except it's actually in the front this time, we bring the 5 down because we didn't multiply that to anything, or wasn't inside that quantity, so we just bring it down. But now we can combine our like terms. A positive 5 and a positive 4. Those combine to be positive 9, and I'll write my answer in standard form and just bring down the negative 8x because we didn't combine that with anything. Okay, so again, we do our distributing first. All our combining like terms are adding second. Okay, so here we have another example that actually has 2 parentheses in it. Now, I do write the direction to simplify completely because I want you now to look at the habit of always think about distributing first and combining like terms second. but you might just see directions called, they just say simplify, okay? So if the directions say simplify, you are looking to do both, distributing and combining like terms. And notice that, briefly, we'll talk about this is not an equation, so we're not solving for the variable. We can't solve for the variable. It's not an equation, so all we could do is put it in its simplest or smallest form. So we distribute the -7 to each of these terms, but then over here we distribute the +3 to each of these terms. Okay, so we actually distribute twice for this problem. -7 times x is -7x. -7 times a +4 is a -28. Okay, now we distribute the 3 to every term in the second quantity. Well, +3 times a -5x is -15x. +3 times a -1 is a -3. After we multiply, we look to combine like terms. It just so happened for this problem that actually everything is negative, right? So we have a -7x and a -15x. That would be -22x. And a -28 and a -3. Those combine to be -31. That is our final answer. Okay? And then for our last guided example, let's bring some fractions in the mix. So we did our basic operations, and you may have thought the class was easy, but it's so important to review those basic operations because you use them constantly in algebra, and that's why we reviewed them. So here's a good example where we need them. So we're going to simplify this expression completely. So we're going to take just find a nice color here, the 2/3 and multiply it to each term inside the parentheses. So we're doing 2/3 times a -6. What I always encourage students is anytime you're working with fractions, do your work off to the side of your problem, and then just write your final answer underneath the problem. So anytime you're working with fractions, you want to make everything a fraction. So we have 2/3 times -6/1. Remember, I could put these over 1 since we're working with fractions here. So we can reduce diagonally before we multiply. 3 goes into both of these, right? And now we can multiply straight across. 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. And it's a positive times a negative, so it's going to be a -4x for that first answer. Okay? We do the same thing, and I'll erase this now so you can see clearer. We'll do the same thing for the next multiplication. 2/3 times the -2, right? So 2/3 times -2/1. There's actually nothing we can simplify here before we multiply. So we get -4/3. So we'll leave it as -4/3. Well, now we can bring down the +1/4. And now we're combining like terms. So these two are like because they're both constants or numbers. But we're adding fractions. So now when you're adding fractions, you got to get common denominators, right? So we're doing a different operation here, common denominators. So we're looking at 3 and 4. Your least common denominator is 12, okay? The smallest multiple they have in common. So change the numerators by the same factor that the denominator changed. So this changed by a 3, right? So we get 3/12 here. Just changed by a 4. So we get -16, right? Okay. So now we can do a -16 plus 3. That's going to be a -13/12. Again, notice I do it off to the side of my problem. Final answer for this one, -4x minus 13/12. All right. How do we do with that one? So I love that problem because you have multiplying fractions, adding fractions. Great problem. Okay, so to wrap things up, I want you to try these two examples on your own. Okay, so copy them down in your notebook, pause the video, answer them at your seats, and we'll go over them. So the next 20 seconds will be blank. Okay, so let's go over these. So for number 1, we're only distributing the 7 first. So we have -3, and 7 times -2x is -14x. 7 times a +4, +7 times +4 is +28. A little tough to see the plus there. I want to make sure I leave enough room for number 2. And now, after we distribute, we combine like terms. -3 plus a positive 28. That will be a positive 25. So final answer I'm going to do up here to save some space. -14x. These two combine to be a positive 25. Okay? Number 2, you actually have to distribute twice. Right? So we have -5x plus 15 minus 6x minus 24. Check to see that your first step is correct. Now we look to combine our like terms. We have a -5x, -6x, -11x, they add it to be. Then we have a positive 15, positive 15, and then -24. Those combine to be -9. All right. Simplifying expressions is easy. Algebraic expressions, first you got to distribute, then you combine like terms. So hopefully you found this video lesson helpful. And here is my cat, Binks. Now, I'll tell you something right now, guys. I am a dog person through and through. And this cat right here, he warmed my heart, this guy. He's like the sweetest guy I know. Extremely friendly. Just a real nice cat. Never really seen a cat like this guy. So I'm a dog person. I love dogs. And I won't say I didn't like cats, but I was never a huge fan of cats. But this guy, he became a fan favorite of mine. Again, his name is Binks. All right, what a great guy. So there's a little insight to my life. But I hope you found this video lesson helpful. Have a fantastic day, everybody.